Hi, this is Tamara from mooglyblog.com, and in this video I'm going to demonstrate how to make the Fair Weather Beach Tote, which is a free pattern that you'll find on mooglyblog.com. Please go to the link in the description where you'll find a link to both right and left-handed video tutorials, as well as the yarn, hook, and the written pattern itself. So once again, you'll want to print that out from mooglyblog.com before you begin. This pattern is made with Red Heart Super Saver Fair Isle yarn and a US K 6.5 millimeter hook. This one happens to be by Brittany. Let's get started. This pattern calls for 2 skeins of Red Heart Super Saver Fair Isle. For this pattern, I used the Calm Fair Isle colorway, but of course, you can choose whichever color you like. I do recommend that you buy both of your skeins at once, as this yarn does include lot numbers. Now, when you make this pattern, you begin with a chain of 45. For the sake of time, I'm going to make a teeny tiny tote bag, so I'm starting with a chain of 9. What we do after we've made our chain is we skip the chain closest to the hook and then work a half double crochet in each of the remaining chains across. I like to work into the back hump of the chain rather than under the top 2 loops, but that's just personal preference, so you can do it however you like. So if you started with a chain of 45, then at the end of row 1, you would have 44 half double crochets. Since I started with a chain of 9, I'm just going to have 8 of them. So we'll get right on across here with our half double crochets, and we're going to be doing a bag bottom technique that I like to use quite a bit when I make tote bags, and I call it kind of going from rows to rounds for bag bottoms. And I'll be demonstrating that again here today, but I also have a separate tutorial for this on the Moogly Blog channel, and I will link it out again in this tutorial if you want to take another look at that as well. So I should have 8 half double crochets here. I always like to count and make sure. Got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Perfect. And then for row 2, again, you should have 44 if you're making this full size. For row 2, I'm just going to chain 1, turn, and work half double crochets across, 1 in each stitch. So if you're making the full size tote bag, again, you'd have 44 half double crochets at the end of row 2. If you too want to make a teeny tiny one though, you can absolutely play around with this. The whole goal is that at the end of round 3, because we're going to be switching to rounds here in the next one, you would have a multiple of 4. So you can play with the stitch count a little bit if you want to make other sizes of this bag as well. The one I made with the beginning with 45 chains ended up about 14.5 inches wide and about 12 inches tall, excluding the handles. So that should give you a good idea. And there's some gauge information included in the pattern as well. So here we've got our 2 rows of half double crochet. And this is where we switch to working in the round to make our tote bag. So I'm going to start with a chain 1. I always like to start my rows of half double crochet with a chain 1 and then a half double crochet in the first stitch. Some people like to use a chain 2 as a half double crochet substitute, but I think that's just it's just not as solid as I like for the fabric. So this is how I begin my half double crochet rows. So again, when we begin row 3, or round 3, I should say, we're going to start just as we did the previous 2 by half double crocheting in each stitch across. But then it just gets a little different when we get to the end. So I've almost got my stitches here, and I think you can see why I didn't make it full size for the video. Would be here for a really long time. So this is just our little guy here. Almost the last one here. One more to go. Okay. Now I've got my, we'll say 44 half double crochets across for round 3. Then I'm going to turn my work 90 degrees. So rather than flipping it over to work back the other way as we would when we're in rows, I'm going to turn it this way and work along the side as if we were making a blanket border, really. So I'm going to then work a half double crochet in the side of each of the previous 2 rows. So I want to work 2 half double crochets right along the side here. So 1 in the side of the first, or the last row we made, and then 1 in the side of the first row we made. Oops, I only went under 1 loop there. Try when you're working into the sides of your rows, if you can, to go under 2 loops of whatever part of that stitch is in the side there. Just makes it a little bit more solid. Now, having done that, I'm going to turn 90 degrees again, and I'm going to work right along the foundation chain. All those chains we made at the beginning, each of those, except for that one we skipped, of course, with our turning chain, will get another half double crochet. So on this little sample, that would be another 8 stitches, and in your full size bag, that would be another 44. But no matter what size you're making, whether you're making this little mini one or the full size one, it's still only 2 rows. So you only have those 2 half double crochets along the side. Then you work across the foundation chain. Let me pull up a little bit more yarn here. And this is one of the reasons I really like working into that back hump when I make that first row. You can see I've got 2 loops to work under here as I work across the foundation chain. So I get a really nice look on my finished project. Then here we've worked our way across the foundation chain. We've come to those other ends again. So we do the same thing. We work 1 half double crochet here in the side of row 1, and then another half double crochet in the side of row 2, because we're working our way up from the bottom this time. And then we're back where we began. This was the first one we made at the beginning here of round 3. So we're just going to go in there with a slip stitch to join ourselves. And now we're working in the round. Let me flip that around here. You can see we've got kind of the bottom of a mini bag. We're ready to start working right around for our tote. So round 4 is very simple. You're just going to chain 1 and work a half double crochet in each stitch around. So I will meet you at the end of round 4. Okay, so here I am at the end of round 4, and I just wanted to stop and point out before I join, that you should be careful not to work into that slip stitch at the end of round 3. And at the end of round 3, after you've gone all the way around, and the end of round 4, since we're just working evenly, you should have 92 half double crochets. So to go ahead and finish off round 4, I'm just going to slip stitch into that first one that I made, and our little bag is coming right along. Now we're ready for round 5. Round 5 begins with a chain 3, which counts as our first double crochet. Now, if you prefer other methods of starting your rows with double crochet, you can absolutely use those, and I will link to my chainless starting double crochet as well, which is a popular way to begin these. After you've made that first chain 3, very simple, we're just going to double crochet in each stitch around. So again, we should have 92 stitches at the end of round 5. So I will see you at the end of round 5. Okay, and here we are at the end of round 5. Now my little sample here only has 20 stitches, but on yours you should have 92. And we're ready to begin round 6, which is where we start adding some of the more interesting stitches to give our bag a little more negative space and create a little bit of the pattern. We're going to start again with a chain 3 that counts as our first double crochet, and then we're going to work 2 double crochets into the first stitch. So that's the same one that if you worked a chainless starting double crochet or another double crochet substitute, that stitch is worked into. So right back in that very first stitch, so it'll count as if we'd worked 3 stitches, 3 double crochets right in the first stitch here. So I've got my third one, so to speak, made there, 3 double crochets. Then I'm going to chain 1, skip the next 3 stitches, 1, 2, 3, so there's the next one, and then I'm going to work 3 double crochets in the next stitch. 1, oops, need a little bit more yarn here, 2, and 3, then we chain 1 again, and skip 3 more stitches, 1, 2, 3. And this is our basic repeat. So if you're following along on the written pattern, this is the part that starts with the asterisk. We have 3 double crochets in the next stitch. So there's 2 and 3. Then we chain 1, skip 3 stitches, and do it again. So we're turning the corner here. So 1, 2, 3, come around, the next stitch, 3 double crochets. And when you're making this in the full size bag, then at the end of round 6 here, you would have 69 double crochets total with 23 chain 1s here in between. Since I'm just working on my little guy here, I will of course finish this up a lot faster, and I'm probably just about all the way around here. Let me get these 3 double crochets made, and then my chain 1, and we'll see. Yep, there's only 3 stitches left, so that's perfect. So after I've made that chain 1 and skipped those last 3 stitches, then I want to join to the top of that chain 3 or whatever double crochet you used first. So make sure you're going into the top of the chain 3 if that's the double crochet substitute turning chain or whatever you have that you used. Don't drop it like I did, or if you do, just put it back on. There we go. Now we're all set. And that is what round 6 looks like. Just a series of these 3 double crochets with a chain 1 worked in between. Then we can begin round 7. And round 7 is a little different. We're going to start this one with a chain 2, like so. And then we're going to work a double crochet 2 together over the next 2. So we go into the first one, pull through the first 2 loops and stop with 2 loops left on the hook. Yarn over again, go into the next one, start working that one, and then when we've got 3 double crochets left on the hook, or excuse me, 3 loops left on the hook, we yarn over and pull through all 3. So with that little chain 2 there is sort of a way of beginning what for the rest of these will be a double crochet 3 together. So the top of that double crochet 2 together is the top of that first stitch, so to speak. Then we're going to chain 3, 1, 2, 3, skip just the next stitch here. So just that chain 1 space, we want to skip right on over that, and then work double crochet 3 together over the next 3 stitches here. So we sort of spread out, and now we're bringing them back together. So I kind of sped through that one, but let me show you a little quicker or a little slower on the next one. I'm going to chain 3, skip over to this next group of 3 here, and then I work a double crochet 3 together by yarning over, going in the first stitch, stop when I have 2 loops left on the hook, yarn over again, go into the next stitch, stop with 3 loops left on the hook, yarn over again, go into the third one, and then with 4 loops on the hook, I'll yarn over and pull through all 4 loops. So then again, chain 3, 1, 2, 3, skip that chain 1 and come over to your next set and work another double crochet 3 together. So pretty simple stitch pattern, but it gives us some really great negative space. And this yarn, the Fair Isle yarn, is pretty busy. It's sort of like a variegated, but you know, it's got its own unique characteristics. So I really liked using these stitches in this pattern to create sort of a negative space where it wouldn't get lost in the interesting colors. So if you aren't into these colorways, there are lots of great substitutions. I think Super Saver Ombre would make a really lovely tote bag here as well. If you don't like the sort of the out of control surprise that you get with the Fair Isle yarn with the different colorways here. So anyway, here we are. We're at the end of round 7. I've got my chain 3. I can skip that last chain 1 space and I'm ready to join. Like I said, for this one, the top of the double crochet 2 together is actually our first stitch. So that's where we want to join to finish off round 7. Oop, there we go. Get that back on the hook all the way. And there we go with round 7. Now we're ready for round 8. Round 8 is sort of another solid row to give us some more sturdiness to our bag here. So I'm going to start with a chain 3 or whatever double crochet substitute you want. And then I'm going to work 3 double crochets in the next chain space. 1, 2, and 3. And to work in the chain space, you don't have to worry about going into the individual chains. We just go right into that space underneath, pull up our yarn, and make a double crochet. Then I'm going to begin our repeat around this round. We double crochet in the next stitch, and then 3 double crochets in the next chain space. Easy peasy. So this will give us a nice solid row of double crochets for this round. And if you were making this bag and you decided, you know what, I really just need a really solid bag without any holes in it at all, then you could absolutely just make every row of this in double crochet until you've got the height you want. You can skip rows 6 and 7 in their repeats and just work plain double crochets. And I think that would look really pretty with this yarn as well. It's got some really interesting effects how it works up, and everything you make with this yarn I think is going to be just that little bit different. So it's a lot of fun and a little bit of surprise when you're working with Fair Isle to see what you're going to end up with and how it's going to turn out. So we're just working our way on around. Now, because we are working just plain double crochets in this round, we're going to be working our way right back to those 92 double crochets for a total stitch count. Again, that's when you're making the full-size bag. I've just got a little guy here, which you can tell is already totally out of proportion, but on the finished bag, much wider. This all makes a lot more sense. So we've got our 3 double crochets in that last chain 3 space. Then it's time to join to that first double crochet or chain 3 that we made in this round. There we are, and that's it for round 8. Now, round 9 is a repeat of round 5. What was round 5? That was that just plain double crochet round right there. So we would just chain 3 and then work a double crochet in each stitch around. And then rounds 10 through 21, we're going to repeat rounds 6 through 9. So that's row 6 right there with our 3 double crochets, and then skip 3 with a chain 1 in between. Round 7, we double crochet 3 together and chain 3, skipping that chain 1. And then we work a double crochet in each double crochet 3 together, 3 double crochets in each chain space, and then a plain round of double crochet again. And that really is just the repeat that we continue right up until we're ready to begin our handles. And that will begin in round 22. So I will see you when we're ready to begin the handles. Okay, so here we can see the top of the finished tote bag, and it's much wider, of course, than my sample. And right here we have what would be round 20 worked into those chain spaces, and then round 21, which is just that solid row of double crochet. So we're ready to apply our handles in round 22. But before we do that, we need to place some stitch markers. And you'll be placing stitch markers in stitches number 20, 37, 66, and 83. And that's counting from the first stitch you made in the previous round. So go ahead and place those stitch markers, but before you start crocheting round 22, lay the bag flat, and you want to make sure that it's flat with the bottom so the sides are nice and straight, and then you want to check that stitch marker placement. I have a separate tutorial on how to do this if you want to check that out, and I will have that linked in this tutorial post on the blog as well. But you just want to lay it flat and make sure that those stitch markers line up and they aren't slightly offset. Everybody's gauge is a little different, and that can affect the angle of your seam and the angle at which you're working. So be sure to, just like I say, just lay that flat, and if you need to adjust them a little bit, now's the time to do that. The things to check are to make sure that you have the same number of stitches between the markers, this marker and this marker, that would match up for these handles. So you've got the same number of stitches on each side here and here, and that you have the same number of stitches in between the markers, literally in between the markers of each side. So the same number of stitches here and as well here. So you just want to do the math on that. Like I said, in the written pattern, that would be stitches 20, 37, 66, and 88 for me. But again, check your own placement. So on our little sample, I've marked out just by laying it flat where I would put the handles if I was making this teeny tiny little bag. And I left, looks like 4 stitches on each side here. And then there should be 4 stitches in between here. So that will help you make your own custom handles as well. Or if you decide you want to change the handle placement a little bit from where I had it. Like I say, the big thing is just to make sure this number and this number happen to be the same on our little sample, but on most bags it probably won't be. That's just how it worked out here for our little guy. Wasn't part of the plan, but it worked out pretty well. So let's go ahead and work round 22 together. We're going to start with a chain 1 and then single crochet in each stitch to the marked stitch. So make sure you don't miss that first one. And then just keep crocheting on around until you get to that first stitch marker, which is most likely in or right around stitch number 20. So this would be our first marked stitch right here. I'll just pull up a little bit more yarn. There we go. So we're going to work a single crochet right in the marked stitch. And then the pattern says to work foundation single crochets for 62. So 62 foundation single crochets. Now, that might be a little confusing if you haven't extended a row with foundation single crochets before. Again, that's something I've linked out with its own separate tutorial, but I'm also going to demonstrate that for you now. Okay, so to extend a row with foundation single crochet, I'm going to first go right back into that stitch I just worked into and pull up a loop. And this loop right here will act as the chain at the bottom of this next single crochet, this foundation single crochet. So what I do next is I yarn over and pull through just that first loop to begin a single crochet. And if we turn it this way, you can kind of see how this is working out this way. I yarn over, pull through these loops to finish the stitch. And I'm taking off in this direction. So for the next foundation single crochet, I'll go under the 2 loops here at the bottom of that first one. Remember I said that acts like a chain? I want to go right under there, pull up a loop, and that's the chain for our next one. Yarn over, pull through the first loop, then yarn over and pull through 2 to finish the second one. And there's our second foundation single crochet. So in the written pattern, for the full-size bag, you'd make 62 of those for a nice long handle. If you want your handles longer or shorter, you can alter the number of those to whatever you like. I recommend, though, working in a multiple of 2 because what we're going to do on the ones coming up. So I'm going to make just a couple more here, so that we can kind of get our way across around the pattern. Let's see, I'll make one more and then see what I've gotten, because I can't quite count and talk at the same time here. Let's see, so this would be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, looks like. So I'll need one more, and that'll give me 6. And like I said, this is a chance to customize your bag too. You can add as many as you want or take them away for a shorter handle, whatever you like. When you have made your way all the way across, then we are going to simply come over here. And what I like to do to anchor this down a little better is actually go under that stitch before I go into the second marked stitch. So we're skipping all that over. That gives us that space for our handle, space to put our hands in right there. So I'm going to go right into that stitch that's marked, the second one, pull up a loop, pull it through the bottom of that stitch, and just kind of pull it up a little taller than I otherwise would, and then make that single crochet. And that just anchors down the bottom of that foundation row really nicely. You can experiment with that a little bit and see if you prefer it without it. Here, I'll show you what it looks like if I don't do that. And pull that back out and just go right in there for a single crochet. And it's not terrible, but it's just a little bit looser right there. So it's up to you however you prefer to do it. Then we're just going to continue single crocheting our way around till we get to the third marker. So let me get all the way around here till we get to that third marker. Yours will probably be right around stitch number 66, and then it's time to do the extending the row with foundation single crochet again. And again, if you need a closer look at that, I do have a separate tutorial that will be linked in this tutorial on the blog, and of course it's right here on the YouTube channel if you're watching on YouTube. So let's see, that's 3 I believe, so we'll do 3 more. And I like to do this because I just feel it's a lot nicer than chaining 62 and then working another round of single crochet. If you really can't get the hang of the foundation single crochet though, that is an option. You could just do a long chain of 62, up to 5, so I need one more. You could do a long chain of 62 and then work a round of single crochet and work into each one of those chains instead of doing the foundation single crochet if you prefer. So I'll come all the way across, and then it's time to single crochet in that 4th stitch marker, and then we would just work all the way around again till we come back to that first single crochet we made. Just the way this one worked out with our little sample, that was the last stitch, but in the written pattern you'll have a few more stitches to work until you're ready to join to that first single crochet you made in this round. And then of course at this point you can take out the stitch markers. We don't need those anymore. Those were just to help us find our stitches for putting on the handles in round 22. So I'll pull out a couple of those just to get them out of the way, or you can just leave them. They aren't really in the way too much. They can hang out there until you're done crocheting. So we're ready to begin round 23. Round 23 is pretty simple. We're going to chain 1, work a single crochet in the first stitch again, like so. And then we chain 1 and skip the next stitch. And then we're ready for our asterisk beginning repeat. We single crochet in the next stitch, chain 1, skip the next stitch, just like that. And we're going to do that all the way around, and this will go up and over those handles we just made. So you just work right along those foundation single crochets. So that's why if you decided to do a chain instead, you'd want to work a round of single crochets, because we do want a nice solid row here to work into for round 23. So I'm just going to work my way on around with the chain 1, skip the next one, single crochet in the next, chain 1, skip 1, single crochet in the next. And when you work all the way around, you should end up being able to, let's see, have 92 single crochets total, unless of course you changed the number of stitches in your handle, then it's going to be just that little bit different. So I'm almost all the way around. And when you get to the end, it'll end with a chain 1, skip the next stitch, and then join to the first one of this round. And then we are ready. Whoops. If I can get that slip stitch made there. I always like to pull my slip stitches nice and tight, and that's why I end up, I think, pulling them off my hook sometimes before I'm ready. There we go. Then we're ready for round 24. And round 24 is the last round of our pattern, and it's pretty simple. We chain 1, and then we work a single crochet into each stitch and to each chain space around. You don't have to worry about going right into the chain. You can go right into the chain space. So After you have finished this round, you should have 184 stitches, unless of course you've lengthened or shortened your handles or changed the size of the bag if you're really going off on your own here. So we're just going to work single crochets all the way around. And then when we get to the end of this round, we will join and break our yarn, and then we'll be ready to add our yarn details. So I'll see you at the end of round 24. Okay, and here's our tiny little bag at the end of round 24. Now you can see by working to these chain 1 spaces here, as well as the stitches, we've created some negative space here as well. And what we're going to do, let me show you this actually on the full-sized one here, it's a little easier to see, is create a long chain. Now I tightly chained for about 72 inches. So however many chains that takes, don't bother counting them, just make real tight chains until you get to about that length. So if you want to use a tighter hook, you absolutely can. It's whatever you're comfortable with. After making those chains, I just like to put a little knot at each end. But before I cut them off nice and short, when there's still a long strand here after you've made your long chain, I put that on a tapestry needle, and then I go back to those chain 1 spaces in our handle here that we made in would have been round 23, and then I just weave back and forth with my yarn needle in those chain 1 spaces. And by doing that, that adds a lot of strength to our handle, because handles, especially crochet handles, can be very stretchy. And while you want a little bit of give in your handle, you don't want it stretching out like crazy. So with this tight chain, this doesn't really have any give in it. A little bit, but not nearly as much as, of course, your standard, here's some stitches, crochet stitches. Those have a lot more stretch. So we weave that all the way through, and we want the ends to come out. So you want to begin and then end up right at the base of one of the handles. Right or left is personal preference. I happen to like the way it looks over here, but when you get to the bottom here, you can just sort of match those up or make them match up however you like, and then you can tie a pretty bow, you could add a button, you could tie a double knot, whatever you like. I like the way it looks with just a simple double knot. Here is just a single knot, but you can see how it turns out. I went in through this hole and ended up coming out in this hole, so it was perfect to join together. And then I like to knot it together and then add a little more interest. I decided to use my Clover tassel maker. This is the large one, and I made a great big tassel with some of my leftover yarn. Isn't that pretty? This was made with this tassel maker. It's the large one on the largest setting. And then I can just tie this on, go right through that loop. I could sew it on, just add a little bit more interest to our bag, like so. And then adjust that as necessary, add more tassels. And this is a great opportunity too, if you have one of those tassels that has the, what are they called? The cell phone chargers. You can get those in stores now. I think those are so cool. So you can have a lot of fun and just add a little bit more interest to your Fairweather beach tote. And here you can see the finished tote. And I hope you'll get a chance to make it too, and I hope you'll give it a try. Once again, this was made with Red Heart Super Saver Fair Isle, but you could use any of the Super Saver family to create your own custom tote. Thanks so much for watching. If you liked this video, be sure to give it a thumbs up and let us know in the comments, and don't forget to subscribe.